this week. Parshat Bechukotai starts with im. If you follow the rules, if you'll align yourself with the truth. And if not, the most horrible things will happen. We could ask, why be so harsh? Why not say it in a way that's easier to digest? But in truth, it's not the words that we should be questioning. It's reality itself that we should be questioning. If we look at reality, we'll see that those words were not too harsh. Reality was as bad or worse. And so the Creator already spoke. The Creator said so himself, that there is a way to get it so wrong that it's really, really not going to feel good. This is life itself talking. This cannot be denied. So now the question becomes, what are the realities we need to become acquainted with so that we can somehow reduce the suffering? And even better, like the promise is in the beginning of the Parsha, that if you do it right, you're going to get everything that the world has to give, because you're going to have peace. And peace is the vessel for all blessings. If there's no peace, there can be no blessing. It doesn't have where to rest. And so, the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish when we are worshiping, when we are aiming ourselves towards something higher than us and trying to align with our truth, what we're trying to gain is peace. Peace is the name of the Creator. Peace is the doorway into reality. As long as we don't have peace, we can't see reality. We're seeing our own fiction. And if we don't have peace, our fiction is not pleasant. And so the Torah has a gift for us, a gift from the ancient world. People who studied every nerve in the nervous system. The Egyptians knew how to stimulate every nerve just by words, what to say in order to make an impact on a particular nerve. They knew all the organs, the function of the organs, how they interact with reality. Where did they get entangled? Is it in the finances, in the relationships? Is it in the mental and the emotional? How does it affect the physical? What type of foods will it affect this organ? What can we do with it? What are the different limits of where it can be carried, and how would that affect perception? How would that affect the experience? How would that affect the balance with other organs? This is what people in the ancient world were studying, because this is who we are. This is what we should be studying. As long as humanity was somewhat sane, this is what they were dedicated to. And so they understood how everything works, and they understood how to create peace between everything. To create peace between everything is to know the name of the Creator. The name of the Creator is the spirit that was meant to live in the human body. That spirit is the Holy Spirit. It's called Ruach HaKodesh. When a person has access to an authentic spirit, a spirit that really belongs within a human, they have Ruach HaKodesh. They know things. They know how reality works because they are reality. They're not in conflict with it. And so they listen and they see. Today, the world's forgotten the nature of peace. Today, peace is something external. If we're not fighting with anyone else, then we're in peace. So the world has more peace now than ever before. Before there were kings with big armies who forced people to do their will. Today, we have different ways of living, and on the outside, it might seem that people are more free. People can do what they please, where their will drives them. But if we look internally, if we look at the psychological perspective of humanity, if we look at what humanity makes of their lives, we see that humanity has lost its freedom. Humanity has lost peace. Humanity doesn't know how to find peace within its own nervous system. It knows how to distract itself, maybe better than all the generations before. But it can't sit still. It doesn't recognize its own nature. It doesn't realize what's really important. And the result is that there's no peace. There can be no peace. There can be no peace because the only one who can have peace in a human body is a human soul. If that soul's been manipulated, then there's less peace. There's less understanding. There's less desire. And so the Torah tells us the nature of reality. The Torah is not telling us something that it desires, but rather it's stating the relationship that we have with reality that's already present. That if we'll respect reality, if we will realize the importance of the spirit and the spiritual, of what we feel and what we think and what we believe, then we'll be able to find peace. We'll be able to find true meaning, true interaction with reality. And then as a result of that, we'll be able to align with ourselves. We'll be able to align with the nature of how we're supposed to interact with each other. We'll be able to align with the nature of the land, the nature of the animals. But if we're going to forget that there is a reality, we're going to forget the nature of what's real, we're going to get lost in the culture, and the additions, and the interpretations, and the stories, then life is going to stop making sense because we're no longer going to understand each other. We're no longer going to be there for each other. We're going to be busy running after our own illusions. Our relationships are not going to be deep and meaningful. Our understandings, our beliefs are not going to be actionable. They're just going to be theories because our minds are lost in the circumstances, in the stories, in the possessions, in the other people. And we forget our true relationship with what's real. we forget the nature of what it means to live in a nervous system, to live in a body, to have every thought and every emotion translated into physical processes. There's no escaping the reality that we're in. We can only align with it. That's the only way it's going to work. So this is what we're being taught in this parsha, is that if you see life is difficult, don't assume that something is broken. Realize that something is misunderstood, something is being used in a way that it wasn't meant to be used. So it means if things are going wrong, it is because something has been violated, something is not aligned with the way it was meant to be. And this is withholding the pleasantness of the experience until humanity is going to realize how it's supposed to behave, what it's supposed to understand, what it's supposed to feel about this experience. But this entire mode of interacting with reality, where reality can work in our favor and can work against us, this mode of conditional giving, this came into effect only after the Egel. The first luchos, the giving was unconditional. There was no way of getting it wrong. There was no, if you do this, then things will be good, and if you do something else, things won't be good. And because Klal Yisrael, the Erev Rav, the situation that we were in, was not mature enough for that type of reality. So then this mode of interaction came, where we're being trained, we're being guided, and we're being guided by this invisible fence that creates suffering. When we violate the fence, there's suffering. And the suffering is not immediate. We don't understand the relationship between what's coming and why it's coming. But we know that there's some type of a mechanism that makes reality happen. There's some type of a intelligence that knows and keeps track of every single manifestation, every single energy, and this becomes reality. So everything that comes out has to be that somehow is related directly to us, and it has to be in this specific way. At the end of the day, we're going to realize that this is what we want. As complicated and as difficult as something might be, after it is over, and we're going to realize why it had to be, we're going to want it. We're going to say it should have been that way. We wouldn't have it any other way. That's the way it must be, because the mind that we're thinking with was designed by the mind that designed all the events. And so he wouldn't design us in a way that when we realize everything the way that it is, we say, nah, this is not what we bargained for. We wouldn't have wanted this. To believe in the unity means that you think like him, he thinks like you. If he thinks it's good enough for you, you're going to think it's good enough for you. You just don't have all the facts. And so the test of intelligence, the test of our courage, is to see if we can live that reality within our nervous system, not just as knowledge, not just as an intellectual understanding, but as an experience. An experience where the existence and the relationship is more important than the circumstances, because that's the truth, that's the reality. The existence is permanent, is eternal, And the circumstances, whatever they might be, are temporary. The relationship has infinite depth. The experiences, the circumstances, as difficult as they might be, there's a limit to how difficult. There's a limit in time, there's a limit in capacity, and there's a limit to how much our nervous system will allow itself to suffer. We black out most of our suffering. It's more the fear and the psychological trauma of going through suffering than the actual suffering. And the psychological trauma is directly dependent on our beliefs. What do we think is happening? How much are we resisting what's happening? But the real relationship, if we want to have one that is everlasting with the Creator, has to be unconditional, has to be based in a place where we rely on the source, regardless of our actions, regardless of our behavior. As long as we can only rely on Him when our behavior is in accordance with our standards, then we cannot really rely on Him at all, because our standards are not a proper form of measurement. They constantly are going to change based on how much we demand of ourselves. And therefore, it's going to mess up the entire relationship. And so the relationship has to be based on the unconditional love that the Creator has for creation. And the unconditional love is proven by the fact that He sustains it, even when we, from our perspective, would say it's hopeless. So He has an unconditional commitment, and that unconditional commitment is the door to our relationship. It's the only available door to our relationship in these generations. Because unless a child received the appropriate training from a prophet that aligns exactly with their nature, everyone that grows up is going to offend their own standards of what they think is right, because they don't know what's right, and because their nature doesn't necessarily align with what they think is right. And so there goes the relationship. If it's a conditional relationship, it's already over before they even started. And so this form of thinking that's conditional, that's if you do, you receive this, and if you don't, you receive that, this is called the Midas Adin. This Midas Adin wakes up when we think in forms that judge. When we create thought forms that are in judgment, we are connecting to this attribute. And this attribute interacts with reality in this way: conditions. This is what it means, Midas Adin. The attribute of judgment means that not everyone, not always, but this is just one attribute. This is a choice. This way of interacting with the Creator is a choice. The Creator can also be met in the attribute of kindness. To meet the Creator in the attribute of kindness means that we ourselves interact with reality through the attribute of kindness, and then we meet the Creator there. In the attribute of kindness, the Creator does not have any conditions. So this attribute allows us to interact with reality in a way that is unconditional, which means that even when reality shows us a face that's less pleasant, we still remain loyal to reality unconditionally. If other people show us a face that's unpleasant, we still remain loyal to their best interest unconditionally. And then, this is the way our nervous system thinks. This is what it believes. This is the nature of its relationship with life. And so, if the spirit interacts with life in a way of kindness, then life interacts with the spirit in the way of kindness. This is mida keneged mida. This is how everything was designed. That life will interact with you the way you interact with it. Humans will interact with you the way you interact with them. If we were pure, this would be obvious, more obvious than it is now. The reason it's not so obvious is because of the different cultures. Different people find different things offensive. Different people like different types of compliments. And so you won't necessarily get that mirror that nature really designed for us to receive. But nevertheless, if someone is yelling, very soon the other party will be yelling. If someone is smiling and kind, that calms down the other party. So mida keneged mida is still present, it's still there. It's just less obvious. And so we get to choose as individuals, as communities, as nations, what type of interaction do we want to have with reality? What type of relationship? What attributes do we want to use in order to interact with life? And then those attributes will be the ones that give us their guidance, give us their power, give us their wisdom and intelligence. And Klal Yisrael represents the Midas HaRachamim. The Midas HaRachamim is to be kind, to have the Midas HaChesed to those who have Midas HaChesed. But to those who come with Midas HaDin, to react to them with Midas HaDin. This is what Yaakov Avinu inherited from his father and his grandfather. From his grandfather, he got the kindness, and from his father, he got the courage and the strength to stand up for what's right. So this Midas HaRachamim, the midah of compassion, is in accordance with the recipient. The two midas, the two attributes we were talking about before, they weren't related to the recipient. They were related to, one of them was related to conditions. Like we said, chesed, kindness, no conditions. Doesn't matter who's the recipient, doesn't matter what he does. Judgment, there's a condition, but it doesn't depend on the recipient. It's a condition. If you qualify based on this condition, no matter who you are, you're in. If you don't qualify based on this condition, no matter who you are, you're out. The midah of Yaakov Avinu Rachamim is that first I look to see who you are. Who are you? How do I want to deal with you? What are your intentions? What are you trying to accomplish? What have you been through? How'd you get to this? And only then do I decide, do I want conditions for this person? Or this person is chesed, unconditional, right through. So this attribute, which is a combination of attributes, is the combination of attributes that created reality. Reality is built on like this. Reality works for different people differently. Will you get judged based on your behavior? Who are you? First, the question is going to be, who are you? Who are you? If you're the right one, you pass. Nobody can judge you. If you're not the right one, then let's see what you've done. Let's see who you've helped and who you've hurt. And then we'll decide who you are. So that's the midah of Yisrael, the midah of Rachamim, is to see the people, to see the nefashos, not to look at the behaviors, to see first who we're trying to judge, who we're trying to categorize, who do we think we understand before we can decide whether they should be rewarded or punished. What do we know about them? What do we know about the nature of a human being? What do we know about reality? What do we know about the true desire of the Creator for how we are supposed to manifest, and who amongst us is closer to that truth? How can we possibly know? And so unless that person is trying to cause harm, unless there's a force that is not human coming through, it's not our business to judge. It's not our business to create angels, to create interpretations that cause destruction to humanity, that limit the power of humanity, that cause manifestations that are unpleasant to humanity. But when there is a situation where there's harm, when there is a situation where something unnatural, something that is toxic to humanity is taking place, then the midah of Yisrael is to confront the problem directly and not to rest until the problem is eliminated. This is what it means to be loyal to reality. To be loyal to reality is to protect reality, to protect the spirits, to protect the self from beliefs or interactions that can cause it harm. And so when this balance is kept right, when we know when to go with kindness and when to use judgment, then we can find peace in reality. If we are all kindness, reality will not allow us to find peace. Our reality is not all kindness, because there are those, and there are too many of those, who don't care about the effects of their actions, who don't understand what happens when they speak, who don't realize the importance of what's taking place on this planet. And so if we are only kindness, then reality will not give us peace. If we are only judgment, we ourselves will not give ourselves peace. And so to have the appropriate balance is to have access to peace, to understand where to be kind and where to stand up for what's right and for what's real. And when we can find this balance, when we can interact with life with the Midas HaRachamim, then we have a promise from the Creator that everything will align itself accordingly. Everything will fall into place. Everything will make sense when we approach reality with the right attitude, with the appropriate attributes. The reason we're not aligned, the reason we're in friction is because our beliefs, our understandings, interpretations have affected our attributes. They've affected how we interact with life. They've affected how we perceive ourselves. But when we go back to our natural settings, when we go back to the nature of Rachamim, the nature of compassion, which is our real nature, from there, all the organs and all the limbs, all the intelligences can find their sustenance. Because this is the design, this is how it was meant to be. So this is the place of balance. When we will be able to use these attributes the way they were designed to be, the Midas Hadin, the judgment that we so fear now, the judgment that's causing us so much suffering, is going to be the source of our pride. Because it's this sensitivity, this power that we have to differentiate between what's good and what's not good, this power that we've inherited from the sin of the Eitz Hadas, from when Adam Rishon wanted to evaluate reality, to understand good and evil. This ability to distinguish between good and evil, which is the nature of judgment, is going to allow humanity to gain access to a much deeper understanding of reality and a much deeper appreciation of the experience that we're having. And so whatever was initiated over there in the original sin is going to pay a very big reward when it eventually gets resolved. However, this reward was purchased through suffering. We paid for it by going through a period of confusion, of some form of insanity, where humanity completely lost their direction. They lost their way. They misunderstood themselves and their own desires. They misunderstood how to find peace. They misunderstood their own nature. And so when we will be able to use our ability to judge, our ability to discern between the different options, which one is best, and we'll learn how to apply that to reality in order to make life better for humanity, then this gift that we received, that we had to pay such a hefty price for, will turn into the reward that it was meant to be. And this, we hope, will happen very soon. With this, God said,